It started with a bright morning and a simple plan. I was just moving my tractor across my own land to prep the back field. That's when I noticed the note taped to my gate. At first, I thought it was a neighborly reminder or maybe a delivery notice. But no, it was from the HOA, and it wasn't friendly. According to them, I had 48 hours to move my tractor, or it would be towed. On my asterisk property. The kicker? I'm not even in a residential zone. I live on farmland. Open space. Not a cul-de-sac. I was stunned. I've owned this land for years. Worked it with my own hands. Built everything here from the ground up. So how did a Homeowners Association, one I never signed up for, think they had any authority over what I park in my own driveway? I thought maybe it was a mistake, a mix-up. But when I reached out, what I got in return felt more like a threat than a clarification. That's when things got weird. And that's where the story really begins, because what started as a tractor dispute turned into something much bigger. It brought out questions about land rights, power grabs, and even who really gets to decide what happens on your own property. And trust me, what came next, I didn't see it coming. Now, just to give you some context, this land has been in my family for generations. We've raised cattle, grown hay, and kept to ourselves. There's never been an issue. Our property isn't even in a subdivision, and was zoned agricultural, not residential. That means no sidewalks, no streetlights, and definitely no HOA. At least, that's what I thought. So when I got that warning about my tractor, I had to dig deeper. I started asking around and found out that a small group from a nearby development had recently expanded their HOA boundaries. Somehow, without any direct notice, they have included parts of surrounding farmland, mine included, and apparently, they believed they now had jurisdiction over how I used my own driveway and where I parked equipment. I tried calling their office, thinking maybe it was just a misunderstanding, but instead of sorting things out, I got a voicemail from someone claiming to be the HOA president, saying they were enforcing standards for the neighborhood. Neighborhood? What neighborhood? I'm surrounded by fields, barns, and livestock, not playgrounds and fences. It felt more like a land grab than a rule enforcement. I started pulling old zoning maps, property deeds, anything to prove my land was separate. But the more I found, the more things didn't add up. Something just wasn't right. I spent the next few days knee-deep in paperwork, land surveys, zoning documents, even old letters from the county office. Everything said the same thing. I was clearly zoned agricultural. No HOA rules applied, but the letters from them kept coming, each one more aggressive than the last. One even said I was in violation of community standards for storing heavy equipment in plain view. Plain view of asterisk, what asterisk though? My cows. The nearest subdivision is nearly half a mile away, separated by a row of trees and a cattle fence. That's when I decided to talk to a few neighbors. Turns out, I wasn't the only one getting these notices. A retired couple down the road had been told to remove their barn addition. Another farmer got a warning about excessive noise from his irrigation pump. All of us were outside the official HOA map, but somehow we were being pulled in. And the strangest part, no one had voted on any changes. It felt like someone somewhere was making decisions behind closed doors. I started going to county meetings just to listen in. That's when I noticed one of the HOA officers sitting in on the zoning board discussions. Not just attending, participating, asking questions, pushing for new ordinances about land appearance and property compatibility. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was being orchestrated. Meanwhile, the tension at home was growing. My wife was nervous about leaving the tractor out, worried they'd actually tow it. My kids started asking why people were driving slowly past our gate, taking photos. And honestly, I didn't have answers. I was stuck between proving my rights and protecting what was ours. There's also this lingering rumor I kept hearing, something about a proposed development plan. Supposedly, a new residential phase was being discussed right near our back pasture. If true, it would explain a lot. Maybe this wasn't about rules. Maybe it was about control, about clearing the way for something bigger. But without proof, all I had were questions. And then one evening, I came home to find a small orange sticker slapped onto the tractor's windshield. It wasn't from the county. It wasn't even official looking, but it was clear. Final notice, TOW authorized. No contact number, no explanation, just that warning. That was the moment I knew they weren't going to back off, not quietly. The moment I saw that sticker, something shifted. It was no longer just about a misunderstanding. It felt like a direct challenge. I grabbed my phone, took pictures from every angle, and then parked the tractor right up front by the gate where it couldn't be missed. If they were going to make a move, they'd have to do it out in the open. I wasn't going to let them quietly push me off my own land. That night, I didn't sleep much. Every sound outside had me looking out the window, wondering if a tow truck would roll up in the dark. The next morning, I found tire tracks near the gate. Fresh ones. Someone had been there close, too close. That's when I decided I had to get more eyes on this. I called a friend who runs a small channel on rural property rights and explained what was going on. He was stunned. Told me this kind of overreach wasn't unheard of, but rarely this bold. He offered to help document everything. We set up trail cams, started recording every interaction. The more we dug, the more shady things we uncovered. Unfiled zoning changes, missing meeting minutes, even a development proposal that mentioned available adjacent acreage that sounded an awful lot like my farm. The local chatter picked up fast. Neighbors were stopping by more often. Some were supportive, others nervous. A few admitted they'd received similar threats but were too intimidated to speak up. Meanwhile, the HOA officer I'd spoken to before stopped answering my calls. Then one day, I noticed a strange SUV parked just off the road. Same spot, 3 days in a row. Windows tinted, engine running, no one ever got out. Things escalated again when a certified letter showed up, this one claiming that non-compliance would result in enforcement by third-party contractors. No names, no company listed, just vague threats wrapped in legal terms. My wife was scared. I was angry. But mostly, I was determined. This wasn't just about a tractor anymore. It was about the principle, about standing your ground when someone tries to take what doesn't belong to them. Then came the morning I won't forget. I walked out, coffee in hand, and there it was. A flapped tow truck idling at the end of the drive. 2 men inside, one on the phone, one staring straight at me. I didn't move. Neither did they, not at first, but the engine stayed running, and I could feel it. Everything was about to come to a head. I stood there, locked eyes with the guy in the truck, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I didn't know if they were actually going to try it, hook up the tractor and drive off, but I wasn't about to step aside and let them. I raised my phone and started recording. That's when one of them stepped out, calm voice, clipboard in hand, and said they were there, on behalf of the association, to remove unauthorized equipment from community property. Asterisk community property. Asterisk, I almost laughed. This was my driveway, my land. But before I could say a word, he pointed to a folded map and said something that made my stomach drop. According to this updated parcel map, a strip of my front yard was now considered part of the HOA's common area. Somehow, a sliver of my land had been redrawn, reclassified, on paper at least. I knew my property lines by heart. My fence hadn't moved, but that map, it looked official, stamped, dated, and not in my favor. I demanded to know where they got it, who signed off on it, but they dodged every question. Said I'd need to contact the board and file a dispute. But the tow guy wasn't waiting. He started walking toward the tractor with chains in hand. That's when I called 911. I didn't know what else to do. While I was on the line, something else happened. A second car pulled up. Not a sheriff, not a neighbor. It was a black SUV, same one I'd seen parked down the road all week. A man stepped out, suit and tie, clipboard of his own. He introduced himself as a representative from a development company I'd never heard of. Said they'd recently partnered with the HOA on future planning efforts. Then he said, almost casually, "We've been trying to reach you about an offer on this property." My jaw dropped. It wasn't just about towing my tractor. They wanted the land. And suddenly, this wasn't some overzealous HOA issue. It was a coordinated push. Tow the equipment, make it hard to operate, pressure the owner, make him feel isolated, then swoop in with a buyout offer. I told him flat out, I wasn't selling. His smile didn't even fade. He just said, "That's fine, but this process doesn't get easier if we wait." Now I was surrounded. One guy with a chain, another with a contract, and a line I never thought I'd hear on my own land. "You're making this more complicated than it needs to be." That was when I realized this wasn't just a land dispute, it was a fight for control, and it was far from over. I stood my ground, phone still recording, 911 still on the line, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "This is private property. I have the deed, the zoning docs, and the legal description to prove it. You touch that tractor, and you're trespassing." The man with the chains paused. The developer raised an eyebrow, but didn't back off. The dispatcher stayed calm, told me officers were on their way. Every second felt like an hour. Then, as if on cue, my neighbor Jim, who owns the property next to mine, pulled up in his truck. He'd seen the tow rig from the road and figured something was going down. He didn't waste time asking questions. He got out with his own phone rolling and said, "You're not touching anything on this land, not unless you're here with a court order." That was the moment things shifted. The guy with the chains looked at the developer, waiting for a signal, but instead, the developer stepped back and muttered something about miscommunication. They both headed for their vehicles just as a county sheriff finally rolled in. The sheriff was calm but firm. He took statements, looked over my documents, the fake parcel map, and that letter about towing. Then he turned to the developer and asked, "Did you file this new zoning through the county?" The man's answer came too quick, too slick, but it didn't matter. The sheriff already knew. Nothing had been filed. The map was unofficial, a mock-up. The sheriff told them flat out, "This land is zoned agricultural. He's not in your HOA. You come back here with a tow truck again, I'll charge you both with criminal trespass." I felt a rush of relief, like a weight lifted. The sheriff made sure the truck left. The SUV backed out slow, the developer never making eye contact. It looked like it was over. But here's the twist. A week later, I got a call from a friend who works in the county assessor's office. He told me a large portion of land near mine, including some that belonged to elderly neighbors, had quietly changed hands in the past 2 months. Quiet buyouts, lowball offers, LLCs buying up farmland and reclassifying it behind the scenes. And get this, some of the signatures on those sale papers, they were being reviewed for possible fraud. So while I won that day, it wasn't just my tractor they were after. It was a whole patch of rural land they wanted to flip into future residential zones, turn quiet farms into cookie-cutter subdivisions. My tractor just happened to be parked in the way. Now I know the fight's not over, but at least now, I'm not the only one watching.